Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to dig deeper into some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Auditor John Dougal and former Salt Lake City Councilman Charlie Luke. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Hey,
great to be
always
back.
Good to be back.
Hey, what a week it was. Plenty to talk about. Let's start off with the Bible ban. We saw some protesters showing up at the Capitol during the week asking the Davis School District to reconsider. So a lot of those people protesting this were major supporters of the bill that made it happen, even the sponsor of the bill. Charlie, let's start with you. Is the Bible fair game?
Well, you know, when you have elected officials decide to use public policy to further their own culture war positions, this is exactly the kind of stuff that is going to happen. There are people that are complaining about Davis County, or the Davis County School District, this being their fault. This rests with those who pushed the law through in the state legislature in the first place. Because again, it was a law that did not, it was trying to find a problem. The issues of CRT and some of the other issues that were used, or that were talked about at most, were never actual real issues. And so when you have a piece of legislation that was meant to be punitive, it will be used punitively by somebody else, maybe. And that is what seems to have happened here.
John, your thoughts on this law? Is it necessary? And what about the step being taken to ban the Bible in the Davis County School District?
Well, the simple fact is I think the overwhelming majority of Utahns agree that there are certain materials that need to be age appropriate for our school kids and certain materials that are not age appropriate, and so they should not be in our schools. Unfortunately, we've had some examples in the past, some examples even in my local school district, where there was material that was questionable even for high school kids. And so having a discussion about what is and isn't appropriate in our schools, I think, is very appropriate. Clearly, there are some that wanted to make the case when it comes to the Bible, it draws attention to it, and I think the more debate we have about what is appropriate for our schools and what our schools should be doing is good. Now, I want more of it to take place at the local level, but I think it's a good discussion.
Do you think the decision this committee in the Davis School District came to is appropriate in that they said the Bible is not appropriate for elementary and middle school age students?
The committee, my understanding is that the committee used the process that was laid out in the law, and they used their decision making based on what was in what is now enacted law in the state of Utah. So, you know, I don't see this being a Davis County School District issue. When somebody makes a complaint based on state law, the district is going to be required to follow through with that. It was the same thing that we've seen in Florida with Amanda Gorman's poem. I mean, you have people who are taking these issues and being punitive with them. This isn't about protecting kids. It's not about keeping age-appropriate material in or out of somebody's hands. This is simply about control, and it is about giving people the chance to go in and try to impose their will on somebody else.
John, your thoughts specifically on taking the Bible off the shelves of elementary and middle school age students in the Davis School District. Is that the right move here?
I think it's probably overreaching, but I get they're trying to make a point. But based on this group would probably say Michelangelo's statue of David, that famous statue, is pornographic and shouldn't be taught to students at all either.
Okay, let's move on to another issue we saw throughout the week, and that is UTA had planned to have a bus in the Pride Parade that was wrapped by private donations in Pride theme. They got some backlash from state lawmakers who objected to that, so they decided to pull that bus out. Charlie, what do you make of that move?
Well, again, I mean, this is another social war issue that we have elected officials using their positions to push their beliefs on. UTA has participated in Pride for as long as I can remember. I don't think it's ever been a problem before. I find it very interesting that now is the time that this is a problem. And so, but again, I think this is where it's dangerous when we start focusing on social war issues, because there is only a winner and a loser. Social war issues are not made to compromise like our political system is. If we don't, you can't compromise on these things, and that's why no one ends up winning.
John, my sources tell me that a vast majority of Republicans in the majority caucus felt this way. They objected to it and said this should not be happening. Your thoughts?
Yeah, just like Charlie, I don't think UTA should be weighing into the culture war, jumping in here. UTA should be focusing on running buses. If they want to support Pride Week and Pride Month, what they should do is make sure they've got adequate buses running on time, on schedule, to help folks get to and from those events. Jumping in, driving a certain political agenda, one that they know is unpopular with a lot of taxpayers, I think is very inappropriate for UTA.
All right, let's move on to another big topic that's been developing throughout the week, and that is the special election to replace soon-to-be former Representative Chris Stewart. He's going to be stepping aside on September 15th. They basically moved this election to coincide with the municipal election, but then bumped the dates on that. Charlie, is that the right approach?
No, I mean, I think that I understand why they're trying to do that, or why the state is trying to do this. Elections are expensive. But the problem here is it is further demonstration of how the legislature and the executive branch in the state feel about local government. They don't care. You know, it is a side issue. The fact that you are requiring now every municipality in the state to change their elections within a few months of the election cycle is crazy, and especially when you understand that the only reason that we're doing it is to accommodate Speaker McCarthy's schedule so that he doesn't lose his majority. So that, to me, is incredibly concerning, because you now have politics definitely being pushed into our election system in a way that it never has. I agree. We need to replace Congressman Stewart, but if it has to be done in a special election like everybody else, you should not require every single municipal candidate to adjust their schedule to deal with the Republican majority.
John, what do you think of this schedule, pushing it up so that seat stays vacant for as little time as possible?
Well, first of all, they haven't made the change yet. I believe they're going to make it in this upcoming week.
Right. And there's no indication that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So I think this is a reasonable accommodation. I mean, what they're doing is trying to say we're going to save Utahns, at least $1 million by slipping the municipal election by 3 weeks to accommodate this, so we can have the primary in beginning of September and the general election in November, to piggyback with the 2 existing elections that are already scheduled for this year. So a minor 3-week delay in the municipal primary, I think, is a reasonable accommodation to piggyback this replacement.
A lot of people jumping in, seeing this as an opportunity to get to Congress. What do you make of the growing field? John, let's stick with you on this one on the Republican side, and how could this potentially play out?
I think you're going to have a lot of folks that are going to be jumping in, a lot of folks that are going to consider it and probably going to hold off just because of the number of folks I think that are going to get in. I think for many folks, they believe this is kind of a free pass. It's easy right here in a special election to jump in and run. Those that are in office don't have to consider whether to give up their seat to run if they lose and stuff like that. So I think we will see many folks over the next several days jump in the race. It's going to be an accelerated race. We got a convention that's got to happen at the end of June. We got a primary that'll be quickly after that in September. So
yep, it will happen fast. Charlie, real quick on the Democratic side, we've heard names like State Senator Kathleen Reeby, Cal Weston, a former congressional candidate. But what about this idea of tying it to the municipal election? Could that potentially help them, because you have a mayoral race in the capital city?
No, what it's going to do, what it has the potential of doing is substantially changing the way that Salt Lake City's elections happen. In the past, strong Republicans typically stay away from Salt Lake City elections. They don't vote, they don't participate, largely because they don't feel that they have a voice. Now, by changing the Salt Lake City election, you are also changing those who will be likely to participate, which does have a very big impact on who you are communicating your message to.
Got it.
So this idea that, it's just a simple 3-week bump, that's not much of an issue. That's not the case, especially for people who are actively running campaigns and figuring out how to make this work.
Okay, we have run out of time, gentlemen. Interesting conversation as always between the two of you. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break.